Well, there's an extraordinary scene playing out on the world stage this morning. Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi defending her country of Myanmar against genocide charges in the International Court of Justice. She's also standing up for the same military that kept her under house arrest for years. Her supporters, as well as her protesters, right now facing off outside the courthouse in The Hague. Suu Kyi is rejecting charges that Myanmar's military committed atrocities against the Rohingya, a Muslim minority. In her opening statement today, Suu Kyi dismissed the charges of genocide as misleading.
Surely, under the circumstances, genocidal intent cannot be the only hypothesis. If war crimes have been committed by members of Myanmar's defense services, they will be prosecuted through our military justice system in accordance with
Suu Kyi described the military's crackdown against Rohingya as an internal conflict, telling the court it is part of a cycle of what she called intercommunal violence going back decades. Thousands of Rohingya were killed and more than 700,000 others fled to Bangladesh to escape persecution by the Buddhist majority in Myanmar. The United Nations calls it a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. Well, for more on this, we're now reaching out to Bob Rae. He is Canada's special envoy to Myanmar, and he joins us right now in The Hague. So, Mr. Rae, good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
Listen, I want to begin with what we just heard from Aung San Suu Kyi. As we said, in defending the actions of the Myanmar military, she says that describing this as a genocide is misleading. What do you say to that?
Well, I think what we're here today to talk about in the court is should the court be issuing some provisional measures until they hear the full case? The full case on genocide won't be heard for at least a year. So what the applicants are trying to do is get the court to make some provisional orders that will provide the Rohingya who are still in Myanmar with some greater degree of protection. And the government of Myanmar is saying no, but we don't want any provisional measures. There's been no genocide, and you don't have a case to make that there is a genocide, and we'll just have to see in January what the court decides. But from my point of view, listening to the two sides, I'd say that the very least that we should be able to get from the court is some greater degree of protection for the civilian Rohingya population. Interestingly enough, Michael, you used the word Rohingya several times in your comments about what Madame Suu Kyi said. But in fact, none of the people representing Myanmar in the courtroom today used the word Rohingya, which I think tells you something about the extent of the denial of the existence of the Rohingya that is still very much going on.
Well, in fact, we heard it in that clip itself. Suu Kyi saying that this is an internal matter and that if anything wrong is happening, they will take care of it internally within Myanmar. What do you make of that type of assurance from her?
I don't think it has any credibility. They don't have, the Myanmar army is not capable of taking the kind of action against its own members that clearly has to be taken. And there's lots of reason to believe that the kind of violence that took place in Rakhine could not have taken place unless that kind of response was ordered from the very top. It also has to be said that the Myanmar army has control of all the information. They control the emails. They control all the communication which took place between their commanding generals and the people who were on the ground. They also control all the information about what information passed between Aung San Suu Kyi and the army about what took place. So to say, leave it to us, we'll find out what happened, doesn't just stretch credibility, it really breaks all credibility.
Well, you mentioned Rakhine, and this took place in Rakhine State. And to look at what Myanmar has said in the past, they had said they described this as a clearing operation. The United Nations described it as ethnic cleansing. They call it a clearing operation in response to terrorist attacks, and that they were well within their right to be in a counterterrorism operation.
Yeah, I think the question then becomes, even if you were to accept that argument, which frankly, the kind of operation which took place against the army and the police could hardly be described as a major terror attack. There's no question there is an organization called ARSA, which is the militant wing of a political activity in Rakhine, but nothing justifies the kind of response that we saw. And let's not forget, this treatment of the Rohingya has not just been going on in response to what took place in August of 2017. It's been going on for decades. And the discrimination against the Rohingya has been going on for decades. The hate speech against the Rohingya has been going on for decades. The discrimination has been going on. So you've got to look at this in context. And the narrative that was presented by Aung San Suu Kyi today dealt with none of those issues.
Well, as we said, you are Canada's special envoy to Myanmar. You traveled to the region in the aftermath of this cleansing. Tell us what you saw. I think it's worthwhile for you to share with Canadians what you saw on the ground.
Well, I've been going back to the region for the last 2 years. I've been into the camps 5 times. Every conversation with someone from the camp will reveal stories of another atrocity, another series of events. We heard that in The Hague yesterday. Burning of villages. I flew over northern Rakhine. I've not been allowed to travel either by car or on foot in northern Rakhine, apart from one small community. But I've seen burnt out villages. I've seen masses of damage that's been caused by burning, by people having to leave. I've had interviews with women describing torture and rape and the burning of their children, the killing of their children. I'm not alone. Every person who's been into the camps has heard these stories. The evidence is growing and gathering. That's why we need to take further legal action and to make sure that we do get a hearing on the genocide question, because it's hard to explain what has taken place and saying, oh, this is just an accident or it's just ethnic cleansing. One of the lawyers for the Rohingya today said, well, we can't really call it a genocide because they don't have an accurate count of how many people were killed. As if you need to have a resident accountant with you every time you're being murdered. It's an absurd series of defenses that we're hearing from the other side.
Yeah, Mr. Ray, we only have about 30 seconds, but you keep talking about this hearing is about making sure that there are protections for the Rohingya people. What exactly can the court do at the end of this hearing?
Well, the court can order some provisional, what's called provisional measures. And what I think is hoped is that the provisional measures will provide further accountability by the government of Myanmar for what is going on in Rakhine, and will provide further access. One of the real problems we have is we do not have access to what is taking place in northern Rakhine. We're unable to get the accurate information, and there are many, many UN organizations which would love to have the kind of access which is being asked for, and the International Court of Justice is in a position to order that.
Mr. Ray, thank you for this.
Thank you.
That is Bob Ray, Canada's Special Envoy to Myanmar, who joins us in The Hague.